Hey chess lovers, today I'm going to show you a game between Vidit Gujarathi and David Howell which was played in the Mr.Dodgy Invitational 2.0 tournament, in which Vidit Gujarathi crushed David Howell like anything. So without wasting any further time, let's move on to the game. Here Vidit Gujarathi with the white pieces starts with the following move: 1d4, d5, c4, c6, knight to f3, knight f6 and knight to c3. So here the players played the Queen's Gambit, declined 3 knights variation in the Slough defense. Black continued with the move pawn takes pawn, and here a4. Why a4? Because it's a prophylactic move, because white wants to go with the move e3 and pick up this pawn. But if he directly goes e3, then black can move his pawn to b5 and protect this pawn. So for this case we go a4, so that in the next move we can go e3, but here this time b5 can't come because we can take the pawn. Moving ahead, black responds with e6, e3 and c5, challenging the center. We take the pawn, c takes d, pawn takes d4 and then bishop to e7, preparing to castle. So here both the players castled, and now Vidit went queen to e2 with the idea of rook to d1 and pushing on the center. Now knight came to c6, rook to d1 and knight to b4. His idea is to continue with the move a5 to fix this knight here, and then in the future he could go here and become a monster. So to avoid this threat, white himself went a5 so that black can't execute his threat. Then black responded with the move bishop to d7, developing his last piece, and knight to e5, bishop to c6, bishop to f4 and bishop to d5 so as to exchange pieces. Here we have to take with the knight because we want to keep the bishop pair in the game as the position is open. Knight takes knight and bishop to g3, saving the bishop pair. Pawn to a6 with the idea of b5, and after op a saw we can go a5, fixing this knight here. So now we will respond with the move bishop to b3 and rook to c8. Now here white played the move h3, just waiting so as to see what is black's plan. Now black knew that his knight is doing nothing here, so he retreated with knight to c6. Now bishop to e4, attacking the knight but giving up this a5 pawn, because Vidit saw that this a5 pawn is very difficult to defend because it is attacked by 2 pieces. So he gave up this pawn but took a positional edge by playing knight to d7. The rook is attacked, so he had to play rook to e8, and now we go with knight to e5, b5 by black and bishop to c2. Black went with the move g6 because he was scared of the move queen to h5 and putting pressure on this h7 square by the bishop and the queen. Now we go h4 with the plan of h5 because you can see that all our pieces are eyeing this square, so we can attack it and open up the king. Moving ahead, black posed knight to c4 so as to exchange these knights, but we neglect it and go h5. Bishop to f6, attacking the knight, pawn takes, and then we take the free pawn on a6. Now you'd think that when black played this move knight to c4, why can't we take this pawn? This is because we can take this pawn, but we can take this at any move. So he went on with his plan, assuming that after his plan is executed he can take at any time. So after pawn takes, he took it, and then when the knight came to attack the rook and the bishop with a fork, he had to do something crazy. So if here rook to a1, then knight takes bishop, queen takes, and knight takes knight as a free knight, as there's a discovered attack on the queen and we took a free knight. So we can see here that we can't move the rook here because the bishop or the knight will hang. And here white came up with the move bishop takes pawn, exposing the king. Here pawn takes bishop is a force because if knight takes rook like this, then bishop takes pawn will be a fork on the rook and the king, and after the king moves, we take, and then queen comes into the action. And even though white is a piece down but has 2 pawns, and also the black king is very weak, so white has a little edge in this position. Moving behind, so the pawn had to take this bishop right here, and then white goes with queen to g4, exploiting the black's weakness. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, and then queen to e7, because if queen takes pawn, then queen can come in between and defend it. And also you know that we have an attack on this rook, so black can easily win. But here white came with a very innovative move, that is rook a to d6. Wow, we are just sacrificing this rook away. This is because if knight takes rook, pawn takes, and queen to f7 so as to protect this pawn, you can see that we take this knight and we are just an exchange down with 1 pawn up. And here black had to play this move, as this can come as a fork and win the rook. So after rook c to d8, we can take 1 more pawn, and we are 2 pawns up with a monstrous d6 pawn, and we can easily convert it. So this was the idea of the sack on d6. Now of course Howell didn't take it and went queen to f7 instead, and then rook to d7 attacking the queen. Now here the queen can't move, as if the queen moves right here, then queen takes pawn, check to h8. Here it's a checkmate. So the rook had to come in between in this position, and then rook takes rook, queen takes pawn, check, king to f8, and now we do a rook lift by placing a rook on d4 with the idea of rook to f4 check, exploiting the king, or to go from h4 to h8 checkmate on the back rank. Here black went with knight to d5 so as to prevent rook to f4 check, rook to h4, queen g7, assuming that if the queens are exchanged, black is a piece up so he can win. But queen takes a pawn, not the queen. Then rook to e8 and queen to f5 check. Here black is over because black goes any move, let's say king to g8, then rook to g4 is coming, taking the queen right here. And if the other move, that is king to e7, which was played in the game, we go rook to h7 and win the queen. And here unfortunately black was completely losing, so Howell had to resign and Vidit won a crushing game. So I hope you understand the key points and moments in this game where Vidit shows his wit and manages to crush Howell in the quarterfinals and goes on to the semifinals. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. If you did, then like this video, share it to your friends, and also if you're new, then subscribe my channel for more such interesting videos. Till then, stay safe, keep learning, and meet you in my next video.